Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to call the meeting of the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners to order. We will now be led in prayer by Commissioner Turner, and then Commissioner Gurley will lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Let's pray. Most gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we're thankful for an opportunity tonight to be afforded the representation of our citizens, Lord. It's not something that we take lightly, and I ask that you be with us tonight, Lord, as we have some serious discussions that affect families in this county, employees in this county, and individuals as a whole. Just give us guidance tonight, Lord. Help us to be able to have clear mind and clear thought about what's being spoken, and help us to be able to understand the situation and grasp everything before we make a decision that's fair to the county and fair to the individuals that are going to be involved in our decisions, Lord. I ask that you be with the families that are here tonight, Lord. We're thankful for their participation in the democratic process. We're thankful for this county, Lord, and we're thankful for this country that you've blessed us and afforded us the opportunity to live in. I ask all this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Right, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer. Here. Commissioner Piercy. Here. Commissioner Jordan. Here. Commissioner P. Here. Commissioner Cook. Here. Commissioner Jernigan. Here. Commissioner Cush. Present. Commissioner Reed. Here. Commissioner Gurley. Here. Commissioner Turner. Here. Commissioner Allen. Here. Commissioner Stevens. Here. Commissioner Johnson. Here. Commissioner Baum. Here. Commissioner Nipper. Here. Commissioner Dodd. Commissioner Phillips, Commissioner McAdoo, Commissioner Kaplan, Commissioner Gooch, Commissioner Serena. We have a quorum, 21 present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, you have before you a copy of the minutes of the last meeting. Call on Commissioner Phillips.
Mayor Burgess, I've reviewed those minutes. I find them in order and move for their approval.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second, Commissioner Cush. Did anyone have any corrections or additions? There being none, all of you in favor of that, then please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. Thank you very much. Now we have a time set aside for public comments, and our first speaker, Mr. Pete Dowdy. And as each of you come forward, please give us your name and address and make your comments, and we are asking you to limit these comments to 3 minutes or less. Yes.
Pete Dowdy, 1415 Knight Drive, Murfreesboro, publisher of the Rutherford Reader. Mr. Mayor, thank you, and the rest of you. Tonight, I've got just a brief, but it is a complaint and something that I think should be shared with someone other than just the mayor and myself. I'm going to read it so that I don't leave anything out. When I was growing up in the 40s and the 50s, it was pretty easy to follow and believe basic honorable principles and foundations that were a part of the American way. Things aren't so great anymore, and my purpose here this evening is to point out the lack of respect for our Constitution and mainly our First Amendment. On March the 16th, one individual complained about being offended by the reader that was in the clerk's office building down the street. The guy was directed to see the mayor, and after he talked to the mayor, Mayor Burgess called down there, from what I understand, and had all racks removed. There was the Reader, the Post, the Pulse, and whatever else was in there. The next day, I visited the mayor, and I asked the mayor if he would please identify that particular individual. His reply to me was, "I've seen him around, but I didn't get his name." in my opinion, is that the mayor's reaction to that complaint was personal, political, and against my First Amendment rights. I'm offended by the mayor's lack of response in calling attention to the First Amendment to this particular individual that could not or would not identify himself. And first of all, you refer to yourselves as elected officials, and I was at a meeting Friday night where Ted Nugent said that every elected official ought to be reminded that they are elected employees. And I think that there's a lot of times that not just you people, but elected people should not just have a knee-jerk reaction to a complaint. I want the Reader, the Post, and the Pulse put back in this particular building, and the maps and whatever else is in there I don't care about. But this is what I think should happen, and all three of them should be in the same place, not one in the clerk's office and the rest of us out in the hallway. Thank you very much.
All right, our next speaker is Casey Gregory.
I'm Casey Gregory, 5084 Morgan Taylor Drive. I am here today to speak about the county insurance. I am a lifelong resident of Rutherford County. I know that many departments are affected by this vote tonight, but I can only speak to my experience with the Sheriff Department. I grew up there. My father retired there from over 30 years, and my husband works there now. He's been there 9 years. Every day, my husband goes to work for you guys, for everyone in this county. He's seen things that normal citizens should not see, but he does it because he loves his job, and with his job come the benefits. I am his biggest supporter. It's me and the kids who have to worry if he's going to come home at night. You can't understand the panic when you get a phone call in the middle of the night that there's something wrong or he's at the hospital. If Proposition 2 or 3, it's just disrespectful to punish the married employees of Rutherford County, to punish the employees with children. We have the right to choose comprehensive and affordable insurance, and right now the county insurance is better and less cost than at my place of employment. An extra $332 a month. How can a working family afford that if they can't even be guaranteed overtime pay? Please don't punish the people who are married, the people who have children. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to ask all of you to be respectful. This is not a time, just let the people make their comments. That's what this is all about. Next, we have listed Monique Tillage.
Hi, my name is Monique Tillage, and I'm here to speak against Proposal 3 for the health insurance plan. Currently, my husband and myself are both county employees. As I was looking over the proposal, I didn't really feel that we would be affected by the change because we're both county employees. However, after I spoke with risk management, I was told that there is really no way to flag whether both people affected work for the county. which means that we would still fall under the spouse whose one person works for the county, the other spouse, even though I work for the county, I'm on his insurance plan, and we would still be affected by the change. We're currently paying $323.11 a month for insurance. This is about $3,231.10 a year. If Proposal 3 were to pass, that means that we would incur an additional $322.02 per month. And then the email says that that amount will fluctuate. So that means on average, we will be spending $7,095.34 per year for our insurance, which is 36% of my husband's annual income just in insurance. Now, I've spoken to a lot of county employees, but I can only speak for myself. I love my job. My husband loves his job. We love Rutherford County. And we love coming to work and doing the job that we do. But if Proposal 3 were to pass, one of us would have to seek employment someplace else. I feel that that is unfair and that is unjust. There is also the ability for us to take separate plans, even though we both work for the county, but that also means that we would both have separate deductibles. One of us would incur costs at one job, the other would incur costs at the other job. Then one of us would have to carry the children, and we'd both have separate deductibles. I do believe that it is not the intent of this committee to impose decisions that would adversely affect Rutherford County employees. And for this reason, I would ask for you to consider the effects that Proposal number 3 would have on a lot of employees who are in this same situation. We are not the only county employees where husband and wife both work for the county. I just ask, please consider how your decision impacts these families. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Matt Rowe.
My name is Matthew Rowe. I live at 1540 Las Casas Pike, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I work for the Sheriff's Office as a school resource officer. I also serve as our Fraternal Order of Police president. I'm here speaking as both against the insurance cost. It is not right to balance the budget on your employees' backs. It's not. The employees give all they can all the time for, I say, a very good salary, because we do a very good job at our salary. My wife was looking at going to work this summer, but she's not going to now, because if Proposal 1 or Proposal 3, it's not worth it. It's going to cost us more. And health insurance, another deductible, and nationally, we see this happening. It goes first to the spouses, next we're afraid it's going to be the dependents. And next thing you know, insurance is gone. And it happens within a 10-year time period on average. And that's from the National Fraternal Order of Police Legislative and Labor Services Office. Those are the facts that we know, that this is a slippery slope, that once we start balancing budgets on employees' backs, employees will start to leave in droves. There are a bunch of employees at the Sheriff's Office and in the schools who have spouses who work at other places, but our insurance with the county is better, and it's better for a reason, because we work for a lower salary than our private sector counterparts, with the understanding that we will have a good retirement and good benefits. And we're going to incur more money on the taxpayers with having to have an increase in training costs. It's going to be a harder time to recruit valuable employees, and it's going to be harder to retain your valuable employees. So in closing, I just ask that we try to find another way, because option 3 is a disaster. Proposal 3, that is just bad news all the way around, because that's going to mean my take-home pay after insurance and my $75 contribution to my FSA, my take-home pay would be under $700 a month. I mean, under $700 every 2 weeks. That's the real number that we need to look at. That with 5 years' experience, my take-home pay net, after I pay taxes, after health insurance, and after my $75 contribution, is around $940. That's for myself, my wife, and 2 children. And if that proposal 3 happens, I love being an SRO. I'm not going to be able to do it because I'm going to have to find a job that has better insurance so I can take care of my family. So I'm just asking, please don't try to balance the budget on your employees' backs. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Bo Davis. Yes, let's do that afterwards, please. Make your comments and we'll let our clerk's assistants do that for you. You can go ahead and do it now.
All right. My name is Bo Davis. My address is 7207 Farmington Road, Las Casas, Tennessee. And I'm going to be speaking about the insurance as well. On March 26, Mr. Brown showed statistics from a national survey. The survey showed the following. Our employee contribution is less than the national average. Our deductibles are on the high side of average. Our out-of-pocket max is well above average. Our coverage is average. Our co-pays are higher than average, and our prescription rates are average. Mr. Brown referred to our insurance as a rich plan, but looking at the national survey, it's a very average plan that's continuing to get worse. A 1% employee contribution increase has already been approved over the next several years. Our vision insurance became a standalone benefit, and a premium became 100% paid by the employee. A premium increase for vision insurance was approved on March 26 due to a loss of around 1,000 employees participating after becoming a standalone benefit, and now we're discussing a spousal carve-out. When the spousal carve-out was presented to you all, Ms. Street stated that it would be a significant savings for the employee and the employer. That's simply not the case for the employee. Employees would be responsible for paying 2 premiums, 2 deductibles, and be put at risk for having 2 out-of-pocket maximums. Increased expenses of this size would be detrimental to families' finances, including bankruptcy, divorce, and added stress. Mr. Brown stated that with the spousal carve-out option, families affected generally came out a wash or saved money. Mr. Brown stated he projected 30 to 50% of spouses would leave, saving the county over $8 million. If our vision rates increase due to a lack of participation, I feel our health insurance rates would do the same. We must stay competitive with benefits and pay to ensure that we have the best employees and not used as a stepping stone for employees to get training and experience. Ms. Street stated that approximately 1/3 of our employees are in each of the 3 options. Ms. Street stated that the HRA plan has become more popular over recent years and is substantially cheaper. I have used this plan for several years now, and I believe it is our best option. A coworker of mine who has a special needs child and a tremendous amount of medical bills has switched to the HRA and found that the plan is the best option for his family. Over the last few days, I've learned that several people do not understand how their insurance works, and they believe that the HRA plan is a risky plan. I feel that if employees were educated, more would choose the HRA plan. The money saved from the cheaper employee contribution could be applied to a tax-free health savings account to better prepare employees for unexpected medical bills. If we educate families and 2,000 families switch to the HRA plan, the county would save more than $8 million in insurance premium, and we wouldn't have to change our plan. I'm working on getting a chart passed out, and that would explain the savings. And if I'd be allowed the time, I'd be glad to explain the chart. Thank you very much.
Mr. Nathan Pagel.
Members of the commission, my name is Nathan Pagel, and my address is 8836 Rhodes Lane in Las Casas. I'm employed by the Rutherford County Sheriff's Office and serve as the Vice President of the Hendon McClanahan FOP Lodge here in Murfreesboro. Phil, I need to address the proposal changes to the employee insurance plan. 3 options have been presented. A 13% increase, while not ideal, is the least financially stressing. than the disturbingly titled carve-out plan, which, even considering the best scenario of a spouse obtaining coverage for the amount saved by the reduction in plan costs, still results in a financial strain due to an added deductible. And the last option, which burdens every covered employee with a cost that is sure to be harmful to their financial well-being. The dedicated men and women who work for Rutherford County have diligently and with dedication served our citizens. For years, these people have quietly worked at wages that are below comparable wages for their jobs, being assured that the pay plan will correct the insufficiency, but never seeming to catch up. In fact, there have been years of decrease in take-home pay due to overwhelming cost increases that overwhelm any pay increase they may have. Employees stayed due to their dedication and with the belief that quality benefits outweighed the issues and sometimes taxing schedules. Our spouses have been supported and dedicated also during financial trials and for families of emergency services schedules that strain family life. For years, the employees of Rutherford County have accepted feeling that they were being told they were not worth more pay. And now it appears that the spouses of these dedicated employees are being told they're not worthy of the benefits they're currently receiving. The plan title of carve-out in itself conveys a cold, uncaring message of lack of worth to the spouses of the employees of this county. Simply put, this is a slap in the face of those individuals who dedicate themselves to this county and those individuals' families. In addition, placing such a financial burden on the employees of the county would be a disservice to the citizens of this county by causing distractions for the employee, who, along with normal stresses of the job, will be concerned in finding the already scarce funds to pay for yet more cost for their family. I humbly submit to you all that your employees deserve better and would pray that you make the decision to show them that you agree.
Mr. Greg Brooks.
Good evening, Mayor Burgess, Commissioners. My name is Greg Brooks. I'm the Rutherford County Road Superintendent, and I'm here tonight to try to convey to you some of the concerns that the employees at the Highway Department have shared with me. So hopefully I can do that in a manner that will do them justice. A lot of these topics have already been spoken about tonight, but here's what I have. The moral obligation that men feel to take care of their wives and children should not be overlooked. At a minimum, just the idea of not having the option of providing insurance for your wife seems harsh. So when a plan has a label of spousal carve-out, naturally folks are going to go on the defensive. We understand that you're not suggesting that we actually kick anyone out uninsured. But we could be forcing them to settle for a lower quality health insurance plan or possibly significantly higher premiums. Every department, hopefully, is trying to save money, as they should be. However, when premiums go up, take-home pay goes down. Our responsibilities and duties at the Highway Department are increasing, and the difficulty to perform these duties, as well as the time they take is compounded as the county grows. By now, everyone has heard the growth projections. The more traffic we have, the harder it becomes to do our jobs. The harder it becomes to do our jobs, the more important it becomes that we have quality, well-trained people in place to get these jobs done. All this to say we must be able to attract and retain this level of high-caliber employee. I believe road construction and road maintenance are core functions of government. I believe growth and desirable development follow the improved highway. All of the employees at the Rutherford County Highway Department take a great deal of pride in their job. They need to know we appreciate their dedication. So when all of these proposals are being considered, I respectfully ask that everyone involved ask themselves, what percentage of the employee paycheck does this premium increase represent? Also ask, what is the original intent? I know it was not to create a hardship on these employees, but I'm convinced that that's what some of these proposals would do. Now, I realize I've not offered any long-term solution to the problem of rising health care costs, but I believe we must find other ways of cutting spending, something that does not repress the very people we all count on to keep our roads safe, our children educated, our lives, homes, and property protected. Thank you very much.
Right. We've come to the end of the request for public comments, and it's 6:30, so our agenda requires us at 6:30 to address our public hearings, and tonight we have two of those scheduled. And the first one is a rezoning request number 15-A005, and this is the applicant's Mr. Paul Cook with C&M Cabinets located along Sulphur Springs Road. Existing zoning is residential medium density, and proposed zoning is light industrial on a site that's approximately 6 acres in size. So Mr. Demosi may tell us a bit more about that before we have the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor Burgess, and good evening, Mayor and members of the Commission. As Mayor Burgess stated, this property is located along Sulphur Springs Road on the north side to the west of the interchange with State Route 840. The applicant would like to move his existing cabinet-making business, which is now located within the city limits of Murfreesboro, to this location. Cabinet making and similar products is a activity that's classified as a light industrial activity in our zoning ordinance, which requires at the minimum light industrial zoning, which is why he's asking for that. There is an existing cabinet shop to the east of the subject property that was approved by the Board of Commissioners back in August of 2002. That was under a different zoning ordinance at that time. This shop is currently zoned commercial services, but it was considered a grandfathered use. There is a concept plan, it's in your agenda packets. It should be on your iPads. Access is shown along with approximately 10 spots for parking. Staff does not expect a large amount of traffic based on the information that we've received about this, so any improvements to Sulphur Springs Road really should be at a minimum. Sulphur Springs Road is classified as an arterial road, with a future 5-lane cross-section under the county's long-range transportation plan, so dedication of right-of-way may be required at site plan approval should this application be approved. The applicant's concept plan also does show a Type 3 buffer along the west and north property lines, which would be required, and a Type 1 buffer to the east property line, which is adjacent to the other cabinet shop in that area. It would also be subject to the performance standards located in our zoning ordinance dealing with noise, lighting, and other issues. There was a lot of discussion about this particular item at the Planning Commission. Some of the commissioners felt that the light industrial zoning opened up too many potential uses if the proposed cabinet shop were to be approved and were to vacate the property at some point. Others felt that it was a logical extension of the non-residential zoning in that area, considering also that there was an existing cabinet shop located right next door. Although there were two separate motions made at that time, one was for denial and the second one was for approval. Unfortunately, at the Planning Commission, we had one of our commissioners absent, so we had an even number, and they were pretty much deadlocked. So both motions failed to get a majority, 5-5. So after discussions with our county attorney's office that was present, they made a motion to send this forward with no recommendation to the commission, and that vote was close to unanimous. I think it was 9-1. But other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Mr. Matt Taylor with SEC is present. I'm not sure if the applicant's here. There's a lot of folks in the, yes, they are here. Thank you. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Do you have any questions of Mr. Demosi before we have the public hearing? All right, then stand aside until we allow the public to speak. So if anyone is here to speak for or against this request, this is your opportunity to come forward and make your comments. So we will declare the public hearing open. Those that wish to speak, come forward, give us your name and address, and make your comments, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. Matt Taylor of SCC, located at 850 Middle Tennessee Boulevard here in Murfreesboro. I am here tonight representing the applicants, the Cooks, as Mr. DeMasi said. And the Cooks have made an application to rezone about 6 acres from the RM to the light industrial. Mr. Cook desires to end leasing and take an ownership role in his cabinet shop that he opened up several years ago, and feels like this is an ideal spot. We have provided a concept plan. There's some very intentional design features on that concept plan. All the activities that we've planned on site will take place away from the existing home and closer to the existing cabinet shop on the east. We've limited the number of parking spaces to the minimum required or allowed by the ordinance, as well as the minimum that we will need on site. All those are located at the front door or on the east side. Mr. Cook operates his business so that all the activities are inside the building. He goes to the job sites themselves, does the measuring. He has about 2 deliveries a week for the wood and other materials. And other than that, the only people that visit the site are his employees and himself. He has about 10 workers total, so that's about 20 trips, 10 in and 10 out a day. Those hours are 6:30 to 3, Monday through Friday. He doesn't work any overtime. He does not work any weekends. He does not intend to have a sign. He wants this to be a very low-key development. He wants it to blend in with the other uses in the area, such as the existing cabinet shop. I believe there's a mechanic shop on the south side of the road. This site is, we felt like was appropriate for the use. It's got very good proximity to 840. It's about 1,500 feet from its proposed driveway to the ramp. In comparison, the Dollar General on the other side is about 1,600 feet from 840 to its driveway. We feel like that this is in general accordance with the comprehensive plan. I believe this is a general urban area, and those non-residential uses there are suggested to be less than 0.9 floor area ratio, and we're well below that at less than a 0.1. Other than that, we feel like that because of the limited number of workers, that lends its well specifically to this property because it has some development potential or limitations because of the lack of available soils on site. So Mr. Cook's small number of employees interacts well with that limited number of soils. Otherwise, I'll be happy to answer any questions. The Cooks are also here tonight as well.
Thank you. Are there others that wish to speak? This is your opportunity, for or against the request. Come forward and give us your name and address. Now, one at a time, and he can, but he needs to come individually.
Okay, my name is Erin Schultz. I live at 4660 Sulphur Springs Road, which is the property right next to the proposed site for Mr. Cook's cabinet shop. My husband and I, Chuck, we've lived there for 15 years. This was our dream home. To see a 14,000 square foot building go right up next to our house is going to be very difficult. It will take away from our enjoyment of our solitude and peace. I do believe it would bring our property value down. In bringing a commercial business right next to us, it'd bring in extra trash, noise from cars, trucks coming in and out all throughout the day. Also, on an already busy street, it would bring in more traffic. There's a curve in the road where we've had several wrecks on there. Even this past week, we've had a couple. Again, the size of the building Mr. Cook is proposing to build is about 14,000 square feet, and that is on a property that is around 300 feet in width. That puts the building fairly close to our property line. There would be noise heard, even with a berm or a fence. Our house is 3,400 square feet. The cabinet shop on the other side is 6,200 square feet, which means that that would double in size for the cabinet shop that Mr. Cook is proposing. Also, there is a sinkhole that stretches pretty much from one end of the proposed property onto our property. When I talked to Mr. Cook and the engineer about this, they didn't know anything about this sinkhole. And when we told them about it being filled in, we did tell them about all the trash and everything that was in there that got filled over. And the engineer stated that they would probably have to dig it up to see what was under there. This in itself is going to cause a lot of noise, dirt, and I have no idea what it would do to the drainage on our property. And again, what happens if he does shut down his business? What will come in there after him? We have no idea. This is on a more personal level. I would like to be able to walk out my front door and not see a large building like that. Every day. It would be an everyday occurrence, me walking out of my house to see this thing. I don't think I'd be able to enjoy sitting out on my porch and enjoying our barbecues and our fire pit and what have you. And it does take time for trees to grow if that's what he's proposing to do. So there will be a time there when I will be able to see this shop and all the cars and trucks coming in and out of it. I really don't think that there would be anybody here that would want that next to their dream home. So if you guys could think that, I wouldn't mind a house going in next to me. I mean, that's why we bought this property. It was zoned residential. That's what we thought it would stay forever. So that's my feelings on this. I did have some pictures. I don't know if I can present those to you. These are views from my front yard and outside my garage. So if you want to pass those around, I put a square around where Mr. Cook is proposing to put the property. So I'll let you all look at those. And any questions for me?
This is not a time to interchange.
I had
on
no
questions.
idea. I had no idea. Sorry.
Make your comments.
Okay.
All right. Whoever would like to come next, it's your opportunity. Come forward and give us your name and address.
Good evening. I am Diane Cook, and I live at 1506 Shagbark Trail in Murfreesboro. My husband Paul and I own C&M Cabinets and Millwork, and as was stated before, we currently have our business in a leased building in the city limits. We are a small business, and we've started our business back in 2005, and even through a tough economy, our business continued to grow. In fact, in just this past year, we reached over $1 million in sales. And so we feel, as being successful in our small business, our next step that was in our business plan and our dream was to be able to own, as a small business company, our own building instead of leasing. And so we decided to start looking for some property, and we had 4 must-haves on our list. The first one on our list is we wanted it to be in Rutherford County. We started our business here, we own our home and we live here, and we want to stay in Rutherford County. We also were looking for the location because the majority of our work is in the Franklin, Brentwood, and Nashville area. 840 is our main, driving point to our jobs. We also needed to make sure it had the availability of utilities. Currently, there is a 12-inch water main that runs across the front of the property, and there's also 3-phase power available to the property next door that we could tie into. And then obviously the affordability. And this piece of property on Sulphur Springs gave us all 4 of our must-haves. And then in addition to that, as we looked around, as was mentioned, there is the existing cabinet shop next door. And then we saw the auto repair business across the road. Drove a little bit further to the east side of the 840 interchange, and there's the commercial site of the Dollar General. So it appeared evident to us that this was becoming a very growth-oriented area for Rutherford County. And so we thought this was the perfect place for us to move our business to. We did speak with some of the neighbors. We had 5 positive responses. We have 4 of those letters with us tonight. One just wanted to give us a verbal. And so we are here tonight to ask you to give us, as a small business person, the opportunity to own our own building and continue to grow our business and continue with the success of that. We don't intend in inhibiting anybody's outside time, evening time with their family, and have been willing to work with the Schultzes any way that we can to keep from doing that. Our intent is to be the best neighbor that we can be in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others that wish to speak? If so, this is your opportunity. Okay, I don't see anyone else rising to come forward, so we're going to close the public hearing. And is there a motion? Commissioner Jordan.
I started not to show up tonight. This is not a comfortable meeting between this and this insurance stuff. The Cooks are great people. I mean, I know them a little bit. Know people know them. They've got a good business. They're doing the American dream. You know, they've started their business and it's growing. You know, and Mr. Cook contacted me several months ago before he pursued the property, and I told him, if you need to get all the neighbors on board. And I didn't know the size of the building at that time. I was thinking it'd be something comparable to one next door, and that was approved about 11 years ago, Mr. Gunner's shop. It's just, Ms. Schultz said, it's 6,200 square feet. I think he's got 3 employees over there, one being his brother. And this building's going to be 14,000 square feet. They've got 10 employees at this time, and they say the business is growing rapidly. So we turned another project down the same spot about 8 or 9 years ago. A company wanted to put a maintenance shop there, and we told them that the road's getting windy at that point, and traffic concerns, worried about safety and things, and it was beside the Schultz's house, and the Schultzes have got a nice house right there, and that company has since gone out of business. So if that company had built their maintenance shop, that building would be something different today than what it was proposed to be at that point in time. The shops in the area, the automotive shop has been there since '84, if I'm not mistaken. It was built as Mr. Ike Davis's welding shop. He lived in the house in front and did welding in the shop. He and his son. Building's approximately 2,500 to 3,000 square feet. He sold the property to his daughter and son-in-law. They're the Travises. They are there now. They live in the house. They work in the shop. No employees. If the Cooks were here wanting to build a house in the front of this property and have a shop behind it for them and 2 or 3 employees, I'd be saying, that's great. Come on. We'd love to have you. But in my opinion, and some people disagree with this, but in my opinion, a 14,000 square foot building and a company that's growing rapidly shouldn't be right there in a residential area. It is getting farther away from 840 all the time. We approved the cabinet shop next door. I told him the same thing years ago. If all your neighbors are okay with it, I can support it. Nobody was against the cabinet shop at all 11 years ago. The Dollar General's on the other side of the interstate. It's over in a commercial node where a little store used to be. The Triway Market's still there. We had a community meeting for it. 40 people, 50 people came. Everyone wanted the Dollar General. Not a single person was against it, which I couldn't believe, because I thought it was the wrong spot for it. It's out there I thought it ought to be on a state highway, but we've got a Dollar General and everybody loves it. But in my opinion, this is too much of a business to be right in that residential area, right against these people's house. As Ms. Schultz said, the building's going to be 14,000 square feet. You can't get it too far away on a 320-foot wide lot. It's going to be pretty close to their property if it goes all the way against the property line on the other side. So with that, I'll make a motion to deny.
Is there a second? Commissioner P. Discussion? Commissioner Cush.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We were at a dead heat at the Planning Commission. There was 50% for and 50% against. This is not against Will. This is a planning issue, and I visited the site. It's not a very pretty piece of property. The only thing you can really do with it is in the back, because the front does have some what appears to be sinkhole remnants. The Schultz's property line, as I remember from my visual, they've pushed their house really close to the property line that is next to this property that we're talking about. I understand that there were 5 people that were in favor. I don't know that we've seen any letters, but I believe she said you had 5 neighbors that were in approval. Okay, so that leaves one that's not. That's the next door neighbor. This is 1,500 feet from 840. It's also on a main arterial, Sulphur Springs Road, which takes people from the outer loop, 840, into Murfreesboro. So it is a main arterial. There is commercial growth coming. There is commercial growth there. They have talked about putting the opening to their building towards the other cabinet shop. Their hours are decent. You heard that. They're shut down at 3 o'clock. No overtime, no weekends. Just because you don't want it next door is not a reason to vote against it. Good planning would tell you this is a good spot for this size building and this particular site. So I am in favor of this. So I would hope that you would understand that this is a planning issue. 5 people have approved, 1 person is negative. So the majority would rule in that case. So I'm for allowing this to go on.
Excuse me. Yeah,
There's more than one against it. One of the neighbors signed petitions for both sides. And I know the one behind is against it, and the one across the street is supposedly against it. But so it's more than one against it. You know.
Commissioner Gurley, and then we've got several others. Mr. Kaplan, and then Mr. Nipper, I believe. Commissioner Gurley.
Yes, I'd like to say we were sent some package of materials from the Cooks, and I looked extensively at it. I have to agree with Commissioner Cush that this is an area that you may put off for 3 or 4 or 5 years, the growth, but the growth is inevitable. As Mr. DeMosi said, eventually this will be a 5-lane road in a few years. The exact point in time, nobody knows, but it once again is inevitable. There are not that many interchanges onto interstate type roads, and so in my opinion this is a good thing. Yes, do we want the growth right now? But 5-10 years from now, when this is, if this is denied tonight, or a few years down the road, there's going to be major development in that area, and the existing property owners will probably be able to sell their property and make a substantial income on it. It's just a matter of time. I mean, just like I said, there's very few interstate exits, and this is very close to one. Thank you.
Commissioner Kaplan.
I'm not on planning, but I was contacted to go out and visit the piece of property, and so I looked at it, and I went around the surrounding areas. And I will say, regardless of whether the individuals built their dream home close to the property line, or whether the property's ugly, or whatever else we want to say, it goes back to one common thing that I typically remember my grandfather told me. When you buy a piece of property, you look at what's behind you, you look at what's in front of you, you look at what's beside you. And I think when they built this dream home, it was zoned residential. And I think to go in and approve this and put this building directly next to this piece of property would be a trampling on their dreams and the thing that they did right. Now, if they bought the property and it had already been zoned light industrial, I could understand approving this. Going to some of the other things, there is a very dangerous curve right there. They're exactly right. You come up around that corner, when you come up over the hill, people are not going to see those trucks pulling out of that driveway. On a wet road, it's going to get even worse. The statement as far as, it's going to be growth in that area. Yes, there's absolutely going to be growth in that area, but nobody says it has to be commercial. And it doesn't mean that it has to spread into the residential area. The other thing is, like Commissioner Jordan said, it initially started out as a building similar to the one that's currently on the property next to it, and then it basically almost doubled, almost tripled in size. It's going to be a very, very large structure immediately next to these residential homes. And so I am not in favor of it. Immediately when I went out there, when you see the property, you could tell it does not fit. And if the business is doing extremely well right now, I'm sure that the property could be sold and that business could be located in a better suitable area in the vicinity of where they need to be doing business. So I am against this.
Commissioner Nipper.
I have toured the facilities that are currently being operated by Mr. Cook. I've gone out to the site to see where the new building would be. But let me say that, one, that when I drove up to the current facility of Mr. Cook's cabinet shop, I did not hear any noise outside of the building. I did not hear roars and trucks moving and horns honking and all that. When I went inside, they were at full till. They were sanding, they were cutting, they were molding furniture. And still, I was able to stand next to him and talk with him, which tells me that the noise level is not going to be that great. Mr. Cook has said that he would put berms, he would put trees, he would do anything he needed to do to satisfy the next door neighbor. Now, I suggest that, I have some of the tools that Mr. Cook has, because I am in the furniture and restoration business myself. So I know the noise level that these machines can make or not make. So I'm going to suggest that we approve Mr. Cook and let him put his business there. Thank you.
Commissioner Schaefer.
I would like to ask what the Planning Commission came up with. It was 5 to 5, so they normally still come up with, when there's a berm mentioned, the trees, what kind of trees, how tall do they have to be when they're put in the berm, and the other thing is 14,000 square feet. So it's a pretty good size. But I'd like to hear the other to see what protection.
Yes, Ms. Schaefer. Well, under our older ordinance that would allow conditional use permits, of course, there was more of an ability at that point to put conditions on applications like this. With our new code, doesn't really exist anymore. They'd be bound by what's permitted and allowed in the zoning ordinance. As far as buffering and screening is required, they would be required to put a heavier buffer, a type 3 buffer, against the residential property lines, which is the thickest buffer. Depending if you put a solid visual screen or not, you can vary the width of that. But as far, and there are minimum planting sizes and those kind of things, but it wasn't a situation where they could limit the building size or they could limit the amount of landscape material or anything like that. So, as far as any protections, they'd be what were already in the zoning ordinance. They couldn't condition anything further than that.
Anyone else wish to speak? Commissioner P.
I haven't been a rural commissioner since I've been up here until the last rezoning, where I picked up quite a bit of Murfreesboro City. We, as rural commissioners, are the only ones that have really had to face these kind of hearings. If you live in the municipalities take care of that for you. Having said that, to be a commissioner out in the rural areas, personal opinion, you got to work a bit harder because you can't just call up some of the utilities in Murfreesboro or Smyrna, Laverne, wherever you happen to be, and say, hey, can you help me with this? You've got to work with the county officials. You've got to work with rural people that work on these areas. That's how some of these road changes you see and where we work off the road came from. But having said all that, it's very frustrating when you're working in the area, you know the people in the area, you know the area, and you need to convince the other commissioners that are there to go along with you in your area. Now, I know I've had some things that I didn't want to happen in my district happen because they were voted over by the full commission, but it's very rare. And I can only think of once when I voted against what the commissioner that represented the district where the change was offered that I voted against, and that commissioner actually changed his mind after he sat down and looked at it and voted with me at the time that it came to full commission from planning. But I would ask you commissioners to think very hard about supporting commissioners in their district because they know those districts better than you. And for instance, you know, this is just a for instance. It's, say there's a store that wants to sell beer. Well, it may sound all right. There's another family business, and being able to sell beer makes a big difference. However, some of these rural communities really don't want beer sales in their area. And sometimes there may be a church that you don't know about, but I know about it, that's within a very close distance, or a lot of children in an area. But there's a lot of things you won't know because this is not your district. But I tend to listen to the commissioner whose district that's from, and I would suggest or would like for y'all to do the same thing. Thank you.
Commissioner Allen.
One of my key concerns is the same one that Will mentioned, which is under the new zoning ordinance, and we're not all quite used to it yet. We're used to the old times of, conditional use permits where if a business moved out, that zoning was revoked. The way it is now, once you give a piece of property that zoning, it stays there, period. So even if the Cooks do everything right, if something happens and they decide they want to relocate or whatever happens and somebody else wants to come in there, I'd love for Doug to talk about what are some of the other permitted uses in light industrial. Because I recognize with this being close to 840, it's a big leap from residential to commercial to light industrial. That's a big jump. So it's one thing to have, a Dollar General store, commercial services. It's a whole other thing to rezone a piece of property light industrial. So Doug, talk to us a little bit about what else could go in there.
Yes, ma'am, I will be glad to do that. Let me just get a little organized here. There are a number of, now let me just back up here for just a second, just explain how we handle uses in our zoning ordinance now. We have a index in the back of our zoning ordinance, one of our appendices, I guess, that lists specific uses and categorize them in a activity classification. There's another appendix in our zoning ordinance then that takes all of those different activity classifications on one side and then all the zoning districts on the top, and then it lists if it's permitted, if it's not permitted, or if it's allowed by what's called a special exception, which is essentially a conditional use permit by the Board of Zoning Appeals. That being said, what I'm going to be telling you here, what's allowed in light industrial but not in commercial services, which would be the zoning district of the one next door. The reason I bring that up is just to kind of give you a comparison between the two. It's not that he could ask for commercial services because it's not allowed in that district, but just to give you an idea of what is allowed in light industrial. Some of the activities that are allowed in light industrial areas, one of them is called extensive impact facilities. Now, this is by what's called a special exception only. In other words, they couldn't do it by right. If they got the property zoned, they'd have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals and get a separate approval for that. But these are activities such as airports, stadiums, sports arenas. Well, sanitary landfills are classified in there too, but that's a whole different ballgame. I wouldn't even concern yourself with that. Healthcare facilities, nursing homes, hospitals, those type things. Vehicular craft related equipment sales, that could be like a car lot, any kind of like they sell RVs maybe, or any kind of vehicles like that. Wholesale sales, any type of wholesale activity. Light industrial activity, that's kind of a broad classification. There are several different activities that are classified, including the one the applicant's asking for tonight, are allowed in light industrial but not in commercial services. Scrap operations, again, only by special exception are permitted in light industrial but not in commercial services. And another is transport and warehousing. That's just kind of a rough overview. And transport and warehousing would be like a distribution center, something like that, trucking terminal. Now, some of these things, of course, require larger parcels of land than what you would see what the applicant's asking for, and larger facilities than what he's proposing to build. But that just gives you just kind of a rough idea. Some other things, though, to keep in mind, I mean, there are uses that are allowed in commercial services, not in light industrial. We can go over those if you'd like. The setbacks vary just a little bit. Lot coverage between them vary a little bit, and so does the maximum height by about 5 feet. So I would say, generally speaking, the uses that you would see in light industrial versus a commercial service is you have the ability and the potential to see more intense type uses in light industrial than you would in a commercial services zone. Does that answer your question?
Commissioner P.
This might be a question for our attorney. I recall several years ago, Murfreesboro City had a problem where they had a business that was selling pornographic material. I think it was on Broad Street. But anyway, at that time, we found that we could not exclude those type sales, but we could say where they went. And if I'm not mistaken, it was light industrial. Jim, do you recall?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I don't recall that situation.
But I wasn't sure. That's why I was asking that.
Here. And adult entertainment is a whole, I mean, it's nothing we're really talking about tonight, but it's a whole different, there's a whole lot more regulations go along with that. Yeah. Now, looking back through the chart, let me just, light industrial, let me tell you what, let me flip back to my chart here. Adult entertainment activities, and again, I'm speaking to this just as uses in general. You can't just eliminate a use from a zoning ordinance. It's called exclusionary zoning. It's illegal. You can't do that. Now, there's nothing that says you can't regulate how it's placed, put distance requirements and that kind of thing. Looking back through my chart here, adult entertainment, well, actually, it's over here. Adult entertainment, we only allow by right in one zone, and again, that's in the heavy industrial zone. Now, in the light industrial and in the commercial general, which are heavier, light industrial again, and commercial general, which is our heaviest commercial, it is allowed by special exception, looking at my chart now again. But that being said, special exception means it has to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. On top of that, we have a specific section in our ordinance that deals specifically with adult entertainment and the rules that go along with that as far as distance requirements and everything like that. And quite frankly, so everybody understands, this site would never qualify for that because it would never meet any of the distance requirements. So everybody can rest assured that that's not even on the table for tonight.
There's no strip or no adult entertainment supposedly in Leanna, but if I didn't mishear you, you said it was possible to put this type of business in light industrial.
If it meets the distance requirements in the zoning ordinance, which again, this site would not.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Jordan.
I feel sure the Cooks don't want to put any kind of adult entertainment out there. And I will go on record as saying I'm against any adult entertainment in the Leanna area. One thing to clarify, Commissioner Kaplan said they could sell the property. The Cooks have not bought the property as of yet. The property actually belongs to a good friend of mine who's been twisting my arm to be for this because they're going to buy it contingent upon zoning. So it's not like they're going to be stuck with a piece of property. I've got a friend that's mad at me because I'm not supporting this, but besides that, I just want to clarify that.
Anyone else wish to make any comments or ask any questions? Commissioner Phillips.
Mr. Chairman, if our planning director could comment on that node out there. We've heard some comments based upon it's a good spot for it. What is the future plans for that particular interchange?
Yes, Mr. Phillips, would be happy to. Under our comprehensive plan, it was not identified as a commercial node, like some of the nodes that we identified in some of the other communities around, like your one in Milton, Las Casas, Christiana, just as a few examples. That being said, there is a proposed 5-lane widening in that area. We are seeing that there were some existing commercial uses in that area already. Over time, especially after the 5-lane goes through, now when that's going to happen, I don't think anybody really knows. I don't have a crystal ball. I just can't tell you when exactly it's going to happen. I don't think it's on anybody's radar at this point. There are some commercial uses out there now. Actually, we're going to be considering one at the Planning Commission on the other side of the interstate, probably here in the next, or State Route 840, next month. So it does appear that that area is growing commercially. Now, I guess the question that the commission really needs to ask itself is, does it feel that the light industrial is appropriate in that location with the uses that are potentially there? I will say staff did recommend approval of this. Now, again, staff's recommendation is just that. It is a recommendation. It's nothing that's binding, as is the Planning Commission's recommendation, which in this instance, they weren't able to come up with one. But that being said, we do foresee more commercial growth in that area. I would anticipate when we look at a plan update here within the next few years that that's probably an area we'd be looking at a little closer as far as identifying another commercial node. The biggest thing that really hampers that area is just the lack of sewer infrastructure to really see any larger growth. But over time, if Murfreesboro decides to extend sewer out there, that could be a possibility. But I would think that over time we would probably identify that area as a node, even though it wasn't identified originally in 2011.
Commissioner McAdoo.
I got one question. I guess the others didn't stand, but I'll stand. She brought up about the sinkhole. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, as far as right now what we're looking at is the zoning of the property. We may recognize that there are some development hindrances on that property that would have to be dealt with. If the property is rezoned, their next step, should they decide to continue pursuing development of the property, would be to submit an engineered site plan to our office. That would have to identify where the sinkhole is, any protection measures, or if they were going to, take steps to eradicate it and fill it. There are ways to do that if it's possible. Those are things they would have to identify at that time, as well as looking at the drainage and the grading of the area, making sure it's not going to, affect any of the neighboring properties. So that would be something more along the site plan phase that we would identify at that time, understanding that, okay, yes, we understand it's there, but as far as dealing with it, that would be at that point.
Commissioner Piercy.
On the zoning that's being proposed for this site, what is the limitation to the square footage that can be built if this is passed in the future?
There's not necessarily a limit to the square footage. Now, there are some limitations in the bulk requirements, like lot coverage and also floor area ratio, the amount of building versus the amount of land that you have. And of course, your setbacks. That's what would limit the amount of building that you would have. It's not like he's limited to, say, 20,000 square feet. It's really dependent upon how much lot he's going to cover with paving and building and all that, and the setbacks and everything. So I couldn't give you just an exact number of what that would be.
If there was an acre there, give me a ballpark. What size?
Well, if it's an acre under the light industrial zone, hold on, let me pull up that sheet I just had a second ago. Okay. Under light industrial zoning, lot coverage is 50% of the property. So if you have an acre, you're looking at a half an acre total lot coverage. Now, looking at our definition of lot coverage, let me just pull that out real quick. Okay. Lot coverage is the portion of a lot from which, viewed from directly above, is covered by a building or any part of a building, but for all non-residential uses, which is what this would be, all vehicular use areas, which are parking and loading areas, are also counted in that calculation. So not only is he having to count the building, he's having to count his parking as well. So again, if you're taking a half acre, and I guess this property is about 6+ acres or so, you're looking at about 3 acres that he can cover under either building or paving. So 14,000 square foot is about roughly a third of an acre is what you're looking at, plus his parking area. I don't remember what that calculation was. But it's not a situation where you're going to see he's going to have an entire lot that's blacktopped. I mean, that's not going to be possible, and that's something that we, again, would identify at a site plan review stage should this be approved.
So in the future, it could be up to over 100,000 square foot building?
Well, I see, there's a lot of factors that go into that, Mr. Piercy. Right, and not only is it just a lot coverage, but you also have to take into account he's going to have area for septic sites. If there are areas that can't be developed because of sinkhole or floodplain issues or those kind of things, he's probably going to have to leave those alone. So he made, as far as getting 100,000 square feet, you're looking at, with an acre being a little 43,000 or a little over 43,000 square feet. 100,000 square foot building that's over 2 acres of building right there, not even counting your parking area. Then you got to keep into account what kind of setbacks is he going to have his buffering requirements. His buffering is probably going to be farther in than the setbacks are going to be. So he's going to be limited. I doubt he could get anything near that on the property.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one other comment. Mr. Jordan is the commissioner in his district. I think the people have elected him in his district to represent him. And I think this commission should respect his opinions, because I would think we would want the other commissioners, if we had a situation in our district, we would want them to respect our decisions. This has nothing to do against the Cooks at all or their project and what I've just said, but I think the commission should respect Mr. Jordan's opinion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? Ms. Cook?
A yes is denied, no is for it, right?
Correct. You have to have another motion to approve. Okay, that's right. We're just voting on denial. Thank you. All right, if there's no other questions or discussion, we're going to vote on machines. Please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote.
Can you clarify that again?
The
because I
motion
hear a lot
is-
of people still asking about what yes means and what no means.
The motion is to deny. If you vote yes, you're voting to deny the application. That's all that we're voting on right at this moment. So, Mr. Sereno, you still have an opportunity to vote. Yes, yes denies. No, you're opposed to denial. All right, thank you then, Mr. We all have voted, so please record the votes.
14 yes, 7 no. Motion passes.
All right, so the motion has passed and the request is denied. All right, next agenda on public hearings, the second one is a rezoning request 15-A006. Applicants, Mr. Thomas Buddy Ogles, 7151 Manchester Pike. Existing zoning is residential medium density, and the request is for commercial services on a site of approximately 19.41 acres with approximately 1.39 acres to be rezoned. Mr. Demosi.
Yes, Mayor Burgess, thank you. This application comes as a result of a zoning enforcement action on the property. The applicant purchased the property in August of 2014 and soon after began operation of his electrical contracting business in November of the same year. Unfortunately, no zoning approvals were ever granted for the use. The applicant called staff and had a meeting with us, and we explained his options moving forward. So he decided, rather than try to relocate his business, that he would pursue rezoning of the property. The applicant does operate an electrical contracting business. Normal operating hours on Monday through Friday, 6:30 to 4:30, or 6:30 a.m., 4:30 p.m., with some occasional work on Saturdays. The business employs about 25 people with 12 work vehicles, which includes various bucket trucks and vans, which you would typically see with electrical contractors. There is an office on the property, but traffic from the general public is generally very limited. Most of the area of the existing building is used for storage of materials. The applicant's house is also located on the same property, but is not part of this rezoning request. The applicant does understand that if this property is rezoned, the portion that he's asking for to be rezoned, he's going to have to submit an engineered site plan that would demonstrate conformance with county regulations. Again, the applicant did submit a concept plan, which was included with your agenda materials. They are showing access on an existing driveway that accesses East Gum Road. Applicant has been informed that improvements to this access drive would be required, as well as to the entrance to East Gum. That being said, there is an existing horse barn that is still used for that purpose on the property, and we've told the applicant we'd be willing to work with him as far as making sure that access is sufficient for his business, but at the same time is still suitable for the horses on the property. Of course, it would have to meet, again, the concept. The concept plan shows a type 2 buffer on the perimeter. We're going to have to work with him on that if this is approved because of the limited space that he has there. He tried to propose what's called an alternate landscape scheme, which is something that's allowed in our ordinance and would have to abide by our performance standards, again, for noise and lighting and those kind of things. Staff, again, was of the opinion that if this is approved, the improvements that would be required would make the use compatible with the area. It is located directly across the street from an existing commercial use, some mini warehouses on East Gum Road, and does have frontage along Manchester Highway, which is labeled as an urban arterial by the comprehensive plan. The concept plan that you have in your agenda materials shows about 1.39 acres. We received an updated concept plan that was closer to 1.46. It really doesn't change the intent of the ordinance. It was advertised approximately 1.4, which I think, again, this isn't really any different than what was advertised, so I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. The Planning Commission did have some questions about the amount of area requested for rezoning, since he's only requesting a portion of the property, but ultimately recommended approval by a unanimous vote. I'm not sure if Mr. Ogles is present. Yes, he's way in the back there. Okay, I see him now. But he's present if you have any questions, and of course I'm present if you have any questions as well.
Questions for Mr. Demosi? Okay, there are no questions at this moment, so we're going to declare the public hearing open for rezoning request 15-A006. If there are those here that wish to speak for or against this request, it's your opportunity to come forward and make your comments known. So please come forward if anyone chooses to speak. Okay, no one is rising to come forward. Therefore, the public hearing is closed. And do we have a motion? Commissioner Jernigan.
Make a motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second, Commissioner Cook. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of this then, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? All right, that is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Demosi. Now let's return to our agenda. And the next thing on the agenda is a resolution to approve our consent agenda. We're going to call on Commissioner Phillips, Chairman Pro Tem, to address this resolution.
Thank you, Mayor Burgess. Without a request to remove any item from the consent agenda, I move for its approval and adoption.
And a second from Commissioner Turner. All right, any questions or discussions? That being said, all of you in favor of that, please say aye. Are there any opposed? What was that? Thank you for that catch. We need to do this on an actual recorded vote. So please cast your votes so that we can have those recorded in the system.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
They all have now voted, so record the votes.
21 yes, motion passes.
All right, thank you for that catch, Mr. Stevens. Okay, we've now ready to move forward with the balance of the agenda. There is no unfinished business, and we'll start on the reports by standing committees. The Purchasing Committee report was handled under the consent agenda. Now we're ready for Commissioner Jordan to start our discussions with the Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee report.
Would have thought the hard part would be over after that last thing, but we're just getting started. Let me get the right thing out here. Got a general fund budget amendment. Be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the general fund be amended as follows. Salary adjustments, increased expenditures, $700 for county officials and related benefits. And that's coming out of unassigned fund balance, $1,850. Resolved this 16th day of April. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
And a second? Excuse me. All right, Mr. Gooch, any questions or discussions on this? All right, those in favor of that, then please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Okay, record the votes. Nope, I'm a little bit ahead of you here, but I think we are all ready.
21 yes, motion passes.
All right, thank you.
All right, we're going to move down to item I because that depends, if we have to pass that before we move back up to our general obligation bond. So we've got to approve this $2.9 million before, so we know what to do on the other. But resolution item J2I, whereas there is a need to plan for and construct schools due to growth in the area, and whereas the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners has anticipated the future needs of the school system in the Smyrna area, and whereas the Rutherford County Board of Education desires to proceed with the following projects at the estimated cost as approved by the various county committees. Design for middle school for Smyrna, $900,000. Site work for middle school for Smyrna, $1,200,000. Site work for elementary school for Smyrna, $800,000, for a total of $2.9 million. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that funding for the projects in an estimated amount of $2.9 million be authorized from a future bond issue for the construction, equipping, architect fees, and other costs for the projects. Resolved this 16th day of April 2015. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Second, Commissioner Schaefer. Okay, discussion? Commissioner Schaefer?
Just a quick question because my mind isn't with it. Is this middle school basically the same design as part of the, like the last 6 we've done? Is the design following it? And it's a certain percentage of what the cost, like 3% or something? Is my mind
Mr.
right?
Are shaking their head, yes.
All right, other questions? If there's no other discussion, then please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Commissioner Jernigan? All right, now please record the votes.
21 yes, motion passes.
Thank you.
Now we go to item J2B2, a resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $38,200,000 in aggregate principal amount in one or more series of general obligation bonds of Rutherford County, Tennessee, for the purpose of financing certain public works projects and the sharing proceeds as required by law, making provision for the issuance, sale, and payment of said bonds, establishing the terms thereof, and the disposition of proceeds therefrom, and providing for the levy of taxes for the payment of principal, premium, and if any, and interest on the bonds. Resolved this 16th day of June, Mr. Chairman, I so move. And that number is higher than what we discussed earlier because we just put $2.9 million on it. And although Ms. Nolan can explain this better than me, but although we advertised for $35 million, if it's for a school project, according to Section 39-3-101 of the Tennessee Code Annotated, for a school project, we can add that to that. Am I stating that correctly? Okay. And so the number went up.
All right, so this is for $38.2
$38.2 million.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? All right, Commissioner Dodd. Any questions or discussion? All right, then please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Come up here just a moment and see if Mr. Jernigan now, it did function then properly. Okay. All right, so everyone has voted. Please record the votes.
21 yes, motion passes.
Item J2C, resolution amending, ratifying, and affirming previous resolution for bond refunding. A resolution amending, ratifying, and affirming that certain resolutions adopted on February 12, 2015, authorizing the issuance of approximately $34.8 million in general obligation refunding bonds. As this is the if the stars align and we get to refinance basically, and for 2007 bonds, and they may not, if the interest rates don't come in favorably, they may just ride along like they are, but. Yeah. And Mr. Chairman, I so move.
All right. Second, Commissioner Serino. Any questions or discussion regarding this refunding resolution? There being none, please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Mr. Schaefer and Mr. Jernigan. All right, thank you. All have now voted. Please record the votes.
21 yes, motion passes.
Item J2D, resolution approving medical stop-loss premium rates effective January 1, 2016. Whereas the current stop-loss coverage on Rutherford County Medical Plan is $750,000 per covered member, and whereas Cigna has proposed to renew the stop-loss coverage at the same pooling level, with the monthly increasing from $6.55 per employee to $7.21 per employee, for a total annual premium $440,819. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the county mayor be and is hereby authorized to execute all required documents for and on behalf of Rutherford County to renew the stop-loss coverage on Rutherford County Medical Plan, with the pooling levels to remain the same at $750,000 per covered member, with a monthly rate of $7.21 per employee, and a total annual premium of $440,819, effective July 1st, 2015. Resolved this 16th day of April, 2015. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Commissioner P., does anyone have any questions regarding Commissioner P.?
Because my wife is an employee of the Rutherford County Board of Education, I have a conflict of interest in the proposal about to be voted. However, I declare that my argument and my vote answer only to my conscience and to my obligation to my constituents and to the citizens this body represents. Thank you.
Commissioner Dodd.
Mr. Chairman, I also have a conflict of interest statement. Because my spouse is an employee of Rutherford County, I have a conflict of interest in the proposal about to be voted. However, I declare that my argument and my vote answer only to my conscience and to my obligation to my constituents and to the citizens of this body represents.
Commissioner Gurley. Commissioner Serino. All right, thank you. Anyone else have any questions or All right, then we're ready to vote, I believe, on this. So please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Please record the votes.
21 yes, motion passes.
Item J2E, resolution authorizing dental rates effective January 1, 2016. Whereas in order to ensure the solvency of the dental plan, the future claims of the plan have been estimated, and whereas utilization has increased, especially in option 2 buy-up plan, and a premium increase is needed. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the premium rates for the dental plan be increased for the 2016 calendar year according to the schedule attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and incorporated herein by reference as if set forth herein at length verbatim. Resolved this 16th day of April 2015. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Have a motion, have a second? Commissioner Allen, anyone have any questions? And without objection, would we allow all of the statements that have been read previously to be acceptable?
That was my question.
That was your question. So, Mr. Clerk, Mrs. Clerk, if y'all would make so note of that, we won't have to read all 4 of those again. All right, then we're ready to vote. So please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
All right, all have voted, then please record the votes.
21 yes, motion passes.
Item J2F, resolution authorizing vision rates effective January 1, 2016. Whereas the premium rates per month for vision coverage for calendar year 2016 to be 100% employee paid are individual $5.64, employee plus spouse $11.85, employee plus child $10.44, and employee plus family $16.37. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that vision coverage rates adopted are outlined in the foregoing resolution for the 2016 calendar year, resolved the 16th day of April 2015. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
All right, we have a motion, a second from Commissioner Schaefer. Anyone have any questions on this? All right, we're ready to vote, so please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
All right, record the votes, please.
21 yes, motion passes.
That's about it, isn't it? Did I forget something? At this time, I would like to call Ms. Street up, and I don't know if we need to suspend the rules to have her come up, because we've got to know which option we're presenting before I read a resolution. So
if there's no objection, we will allow that. So we have a motion and a second from Mr. Phillips and Mr. McAdoo and then Ms. Cook. So all of you in favor of allowing us to suspend these rules, let's officially say aye, please.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, thank you very much. We'll allow Ms. Street to come forward and give us a review of what this discussion agenda item is about.
I think this will take a while. I'll go back to my seat.
He seemed very eager to hand this over tonight. I've given each of you 2 sheets. I'd like to walk through and explain what these sheets are before we begin comments and discussion. I want to acknowledge before we begin that I know it's a very difficult decision that we're making tonight. I know it's very emotional. It affects a lot of individuals and families. And all of that has been considered in these recommendations that have come before you tonight. We've not taken anything lightly in terms of what we are reviewing and what we are considering for our employees. So what you have in front of you are 2 sheets, and I want to make sure everyone has both of them before we begin. You have one sheet that has an option 1, 2, and 3, and we'll walk through that in a moment. And you also have a second sheet, which is a reference sheet for you as we begin discussions about the 3 different options. On that second sheet, you will see option 1, 2, and 3, and it will be broken down by copay plan, deductible plan, and HRA plan. I provided the sheet for you so that you will be able to see what the current 2015 rate is, and what the impact of the option will be to the 2016 rate. So as an example, if you will look at on option 1, employee plus spouse, the current rate is $150.87. It would move to $183.31 for the county employee, and these are based on 12-month premiums. The Board of Education would be adjusted for 10-month. The county portion for what the employer would pay is also represented there. It shows in 2015 they would pay $926.77. In 2016, under this proposal, it would be $1,038.74. So that, as we go through the various options, if you'd like to see what the overall net is in terms of premium dollars to the employee and the employer, that would be a sheet on which you could review. If you'll go back to the first sheet I referenced on the rate proposal sheet, I'll explain to you what each of these options are. On option 1 provides for the current plan design, the current eligibility criteria. It takes the increase that is necessary in order to maintain a solvent plan next year and have adequate budget. And it has the previously agreed upon 1% reduction in county contribution towards the premiums. Option 2 before you has the current plan designs in place. It too takes the necessary increase in order to make budget next year, so our plan is solvent. It takes the 1% reduction in contribution, and it changes the eligibility criteria as it pertains to spouses. That eligibility criteria changes to any spouse who has an employer option available, a group health plan through their employer, would be required to go to that employer group plan beginning January 1, 2016. Now, during the Budget and Finance Committee meeting, a third option was requested that it is brought forward tonight, and that is defined in option 3. Option 3 provides for a current plan design. It also takes the necessary increase to the budget. It has a 1% reduction in contribution. It takes the difference in premium saved between option 1 and option 2, and rather than imposing the eligibility criteria that only those spouses who have a group health plan from their employer move to the plan, it says any spouse can stay on the plan, but the $7+ million that are saved between option 1 and option 2 get spread out among those premium tiers defined as employee plus spouse and employee plus family. In essence, what that does is it takes the rate increase, and on top of that, it adds a fee of $322.02. You can see on the second sheet that I've provided you what this particular proposal does. As an example, on employee plus spouse, the current premium is for the copay plan is $150.87. It would take that premium in 2016 to $500.48. Under both option 2 and option 3, it does take into an assumption that 30% of our current spouses would move to another option other than Rutherford County's medical plan. So option 2, the assumption is that 30% of our current spouses would move to their employer plan. Option 3 assumes that 30% would make the financial decision to move to another option, regardless if the employer is actively working or not.
Benson.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. I've had some conflicting questions from different individuals. Somebody that has a very limited number of employees and is under the threshold for the Obamacare or what, and I don't know, is that 15?
50.
50. Would the people that are under that level still be included in this? Would that be considered insurance?
It depends on what the employer plan offers. It has to be a group health plan in order for the employee to be required to move to their employer-sponsored health plan. If they offer an individual health plan, that would not be considered an employer-sponsored group health plan. And some smaller employers, that's what they do. It's a very high premium. It's often a very high deductible plan, but it is an individual plan. So it's underwritten specifically for the applicant, that individual.
But if a guy's got a construction company and 4 employees and he's providing them with health insurance, then, and this woman works as a bookkeeper, she would have to go on that coverage. There's not a.
It is a group health plan,
Okay.
right?
Are there other questions or clarifications? Mr. Schaefer and then Mr. Baum, please.
Ms. Street, just one thing. I think somebody earlier in the comments was talking about, and both that person and their spouse work for the county. They can stay on the plan if they're on it now, right?
So Ms. Tillage came up and talked about option 3 as it pertains to employee coverage if both employees work for Rutherford County. Under option 1 and option 2, there wouldn't be an impact to those employees. And we have 479 employees who are married to each other in Rutherford County. I was able to go through a manual review process to make that determination. We don't have a systematic way of doing that, so it was a manual review. Under option 3, what would occur is if they remained in an employee plus spouse, because we don't have a systematic way of knowing, then at that point they would be charged a $322 fee, which is what she was indicating. It would require them to move to an employee coverage for one member, employee plus child for the other if they are currently in a family plan, or have 2 employee coverages.
I have one more question right now. The Board of Education, certified employees, teachers, etc. The state pays something for their insurance to the county?
Correct.
Is that a percentage or is that a flat amount?
It's
part of the BEP formula.
Part of the BEP formula. For us, that is really done on the financial side in terms of the match and such. Our rates, we don't set those with that in mind because that's done in a separate process.
So in other words, if the BEP went up this year from the state, some more would go to insurance for the county employees if the Board of Education so decided? What I'm getting at is, does the state reduce our dependency on paying the premiums, either the individual or the county?
So the question
whenever we set the premiums based on claims experience. And then we look at what the total collection of premium is from all sources, and we will do an assumption of what will be collected in the upcoming years. It pertains to what the claims are intended to show. So whatever those means of income are in terms of the self-funded plan, then those would all be part of the formula as well.
Mr. Bob?
Yes, thank you. The Budget Committee spent quite a bit of time looking at these options a week ago, and so we're somewhat familiar with some of the details. If you're looking at this spreadsheet for the first time, you may or may not realize that option number 2 is the one that the Insurance Committee recommended to the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee did not make a recommendation, but option number 2 is the one where employees, county employees with employed spouses, those employed spouses who have other health insurance options would actually be forced off the county's plan. I want to take just a moment to acknowledge some of the concerns that I have heard, and I know that other people in the other commissioners in this room have heard as well. Some of the concerns are that if we passed option 2, which is what the Insurance Committee recommended, we would be treating our employees differently in 2 ways. One way would be some employees have spouses who are not employed, and some employees have spouses who are employed, and the ones who are employed with health insurance options have to move off of the county's plan, but a county employee whose spouse is not married would not have to take that kind of an action. Then there's a second way that we would be treating county employees differently. One kind of county employee has an employed spouse with a health insurance option through that employer, and that employer offers a relatively attractive rate so that it wouldn't cost a tremendous amount to move to that other employer's health insurance plan. But the second kind of employee, even though that employee has a spouse who's employed with an employer offering health insurance, that employer may charge relatively high premiums so that even though they have a health insurance option with this other employer, they would be paying a relatively large premium per month. Okay, having acknowledged those two primary concerns, I just want to point out that when you look at this spreadsheet, the percent increase to the employer and the county for option number 2 looks like it's relatively mild. It looks like it's the smallest increases of the 3 options. For example, in the orange box, the percent increase for the employee is only 6.1%, and that's lower than option 1 and option 3. But what the second option isn't accounting for is that when these spouses are forced off the county's plan, they'll be paying premiums for health insurance with the other employer that they have. Those costs aren't in this analysis, and I understand why they're not. They're not costs that the county would be paying, but I just want to make it clear that when you look at the increase in cost to county employees, it doesn't take into account the additional premiums that these spouses are going to be paying. I'm going to ultimately have 2 questions, but I want to ask Ms. Street one question right now. Can you give us an approximate average of what you project these employee spouses will be paying for their health insurance if they're employed and this employer offers health insurance?
Sure. So I actually reached out to a couple of local employers and asked the question. I had an opportunity to speak with one large employer, and their premium was actually around $110 for an individual. And their plan was very similar to ours in terms of the benefits that it offered. In speaking with our consultant, prior to my conversations with local employers, they had also indicated that on average a single employee premium is typically $100 or less. And much like what you've represented, that their costs are not included in this number, the thing that we haven't factored in as well when we were talking about employee offsets and just the premiums, and I understand there's another debate about deductibles and such, we haven't discussed in any meeting what the transition would look like in terms of premium savings, so I'd like to provide you with that quickly. For the copay plan, someone who's currently on Employee Plus Family that would move to Employee Plus Child on the copay plan under the option 2 would realize a savings of $89.23 a month. Someone who's Employee Plus Spouse who would move to Employee Only would realize a savings of $121.81 per month. On the deductible, going from Employee Plus Spouse to Employee, they would save $140 a month on county premiums, $102.55 if they move from Family to Employee Plus Child. And then on the HRA plan, they would save $34.52 moving from Employee Plus Spouse to Employee Only, and $36.77 per month going to Employee Plus Family to Employee Plus Child. So if we're going to discuss what the net is to their personal budgets, we would need to factor those numbers in as well.
Okay, thank you. I do understand that, but just to make it clear, if the average spouse who leaves the county's plan had to pay $100 a month for a new health insurance policy, then that would increase the difference to the employee by, let's say, another $600,000. So the percent increase to the county employees would be somewhere between, I'm going to say, 15 and 18% a year. So I just wanted to point that out, although I acknowledge the offset that you've just.
So the $600,000 that you referenced would be in comparison to the $1.3 million that they're going to pay out of pocket next year under option 1, should we just apply the necessary budgetary increase, reduce the county contribution by 1%, and not change any eligibility factors. Under that scenario, they will pay $1.3 million more next year as an aggregated employee population. So really, the example you just gave shows a $700,000 saving to the employee overall.
That's right, and where we're getting these numbers is with option number 1, the percent increase to the employee is 22.6%, and if you're adding in the cost of these premiums that would be paid to other employers'
Right.
health insurance policies for around 600 spouses that would leave the county's plan, then maybe the percent increase to employees would be 15 or 18%, but it wouldn't be 6.1%. And then the second question I have is, with option number 2, we're assuming that the county's going to save around $7 million, about $7.2 million, because around 600 spouses leave the county's plan. Now, if that's based on our experience, then what that would suggest is the average spouse that's leaving the county's plan is costing the county over $1,000 a month for their health care. That's why we say if 600 spouses leave the plan, the county would save $7.2 million. That just sounds high to me. Even if that's the average health care expenditure for a spouse on the county's plan, I just can't help but think that the spouses with jobs and employers who offer insurance, those are the spouses that are relatively healthy, that are probably costing the county an amount that's below average for our experience ratings, and that the spouses that stay on the county's plan are going to tend to be the ones with health care expenditures that are above average. So I just say that to make the point that this $7.2 million figure may be an overestimate, because I can't imagine the typical spouse with a job who's going to be leaving our plan costing the county $1,000 or $1,100 a month in health care costs.
So if you look at what our spouses cost from a claims experience perspective, they are just slightly under $5,000 annually for the 2,600 spouses thereabouts that we have on the plan. If you'll look at what the county match is, then you'll be able to see that on the employee plus spouse premiums, there's a high county match that we give to each of those tiers. As an example, if you look at option 1 and you look at employee plus spouse, the county match for the 2016 is $1,000 a month, $1,038.74 a month. So to say that, they're costing us somewhere around $1,000 a month is not really that unrealistic when you consider the claims experience and you look at what their premium costs are. Now, the one thing I would like to speak to is that you're talking about what is known as adverse selection against the plan, where we're left with all the unhealthy people. I think that one thing that you're failing to consider in your comment is the average salary of our employees, and I gave this at the Budget Committee. And for those that weren't part of that, just for general information, county general employees have an average tenure of 9 years with an average salary of $42,202. That also factors in our elected officials. And I say that because it's going to inflate the number. If we took them out, that number would be lower. A certified teacher averages $48,492 with an average tenure of 12 years. A classified employee averages 10 years tenure at $24,742. The cafeteria workers are 10 years tenure, $12,130, and the average age of our employee population is 43. 43 years old, you have school-age children. If you've looked into the cost of daycare, there may be a good reason why one of those spouses stays home. It's not because they're unable to work. It's because financially it doesn't make sense for their spouse to go out every day and have someone else raise their children so that they can make $30,000 a year and hand the majority of it over. So I think that there's other factors. There is the propensity for adverse selection, and I'm not denying that at all. But there is the known facts that's a projection, or that's an assumption, right? But there is the known facts that there's a $7 million spread at discussion.
Right, and I'm accepting the average cost of spouses on the county's plan. I'm just suggesting that the spouses that would be forced off the plan are the ones with jobs who are relatively healthy and that are costing the county an amount that's below average per year, and so the savings might not be $7.2 million. Anyway, my last comment, and then I'll sit down. The employee costs that we've been discussing the last several minutes, the additional ones that may not even be represented on this orange box, the last concern I'll give is that those costs are not being spread across all employees like some of these other costs in the orange boxes are. They're being put onto a fairly narrow base, the county employees who have these spouses that would leave the plan, and it ends up being about 600 county employees. So it's a relatively large cost on a relatively narrow base.
So I would like to make two comments in regards to what you just said. Under option 3, where the effort is to kind of spread it across the tiers that have employee plus spouse and employee plus family, you could argue the reverse about the adverse selection. We may actually, under that proposal, have the healthy spouses leave because they can't pay the $322 a month. They can actually get another plan cheaper somewhere else. And we may be left with the sick spouses who say, you know what, my medications are high, my office visits are high, my medical services are high, it's worth $322 a month for me to stay. So we could actually have the reverse scenario under that. And then the other thing I would say is that I'm not necessarily in agreement with your assumption of the 15%. I don't know if it looks like that or not, because you can, you're making an assumption that we're going to raise it's not 15% of an employee's salary, I guess is what I'm saying. Where you're saying they're going to get 6%, I don't want to mislead and say that by the time they pay the other premium, they've now taken a 15% reduction in employees, okay? The other thing that I worry about with option 3 is those who are against it today may be for it tomorrow if their spouse goes to work and loses their job. All of a sudden that $322 is going to become extremely difficult. And the last thing about option 3 is it penalizes employees where both employees work for the county. Those are the people who have kept me up at night since last Thursday when we had budget, because I can't do anything to help those people. When I make a recommendation or I'm asked to look at a recommendation, I don't take it lightly. I do my homework. That's why I'm reaching out to local partners where I can get information. That's why I'm calling the Chamber of Commerce to see what our population looks like. That's why I'm reaching out to Cigna so that I can figure out that we have 25,000 people in Rutherford County who work for an employer who offers Cigna insurance and who has the exact same network that we are on. So that kind of makes me feel better about the possibility of provider disruption, because that's the other thing I've heard is that I'm going to have to change my doctor. You get companies like Assurion, International Paper. You have MTSU, which offers a Cigna option with the exact same provider network that we have. Calsonic, Frankie. The list goes on and on. I start to feel a little bit better that if a decision is made that our people are going to be okay.
With their hand raised there, Commissioner P.
Well, I've got quite a bit to say, if y'all will bear with me. I don't know how many of y'all watched the last budget meeting that we had, but to tell you the truth, I got really frustrated and I got angry and a whole lot of things, a lot of emotions that went through. I'm probably the only commissioner here that's directly affected by this second option, as my wife is the current Cigna person that owns or has the account, and I'm the spouse. However, I do have the option to get insurance elsewhere. And having said that, regardless of how this vote goes tonight, I'll be doing that. It's frustrating for me, and I explained the other night at budget, the reason I took the county's insurance after having my wife under my insurance for 20 plus years, always under mine and never under the county's, was because some rule changes that the county made for retirement. They made a change so that 5 years prior to your retirement, you had to pick the option that you were going to have to retire. Well, having said that, if I wanted to have benefits later through her policy, we both had to go under her insurance at that time. So it's kind of frustrating for me, and I explained to the insurance director at that time that, my wife has had multiple cancer surgeries and procedures, and is a very costly person to be on your insurance. Well, they said, well, we need everybody, and so that's where I have a problem. We're getting rid of some of our people here, and I do understand this, and I want to say this to everybody here. Ms. Street really cares about this program. She really cares about the people here. I don't want any of you in this audience, and I know a lot of you teachers, law enforcement, whatever. This lady is doing the best that she can for us. And the reason I stood up here to talk, I've been getting a lot of calls. And by the way, I want to apologize right off the bat. I got some calls on my answering machine. I was trying to write the number down, and I replayed it. I meant to replay it. I erased it. I lost some people called me, and I hadn't been able to call you back. I want to apologize right here and now for that. If you're walking around saying, well, I called that guy and he didn't call me back, well, now you know why, because I was stupid and pushed the wrong button. But I apologize for that. But some of the questions that I got, I think the answer that I gave, and I want Melissa, if you would, if I misspeak, I want you to correct me, please. One is, people don't understand our insurance. And first of all, we're self-insured, and what that basically means is our costs are, when I go to the doctor, or my wife goes to the doctor, if I have surgery, whatever those costs are, that is what our premiums are covering. We're not making any money on this. We're not trying to make money on that. I mean, this is, basic to most of you here, but a lot of people don't realize that. Well, then they say, well, we need to go somewhere else and get a better cost. Well, we bid this every year, and some years we have the option to go for another year at the same price, so we don't always rebid each year on everything. Hopefully I'm still on track here. So I tried to explain that to people. Two, most plans out there, if you ask around, you've got a payment of 80-20, where the company will pay 80 and the individuals pay 20. Actually, we made a mistake when we first started doing insurance, and we were paying 90, 95%. In a lot of cases, we're still paying 90%. Now, the commission, part of the raises that you see each year, it's us bringing in a percent or two higher to try to move us closer to the 80-20. Now, the reason we're doing that is not everybody here is on the county's insurance. We've got constituents out there that don't have these insurances. They have to pick them up other places, but they're paying for this insurance, or 80% of it, let's say, 80 to 90% of it. So to keep the options that we've got out there would cost somewhere between $7 and $8 million, approximately 10 cents on the county's property tax rate. So, and hopefully I'm still on my numbers there. So what we're doing is, if we raise these benefits for our employees, we're going to turn around and tax you for it. And not only you, but the rest of the people, the citizens that are out there. So I want people to know that. The other thing, there's a couple of other things that really need to be said. One, and I wish you'd have brought, I've been spending some time with her trying to figure out what we've got here. And one of the things that I saw is, for instance, if your spouse leaves the plan, you're actually going to gain, well, the amount that you save for not having a spouse on there is going to, depending on your plan, will be between $80 and $120. I think it may be a little bit different from that.
Up to $140, except for the HRA plan, it's more in the $34, $36.
So, and I'm not sure what the individual costs will be. At my company, it happens to be Cigna also, but that's not going to be too far off. That 120 for an individual hopefully won't be too far off. I assume it'll be at least double that, but it's not going to be as bad as some people think. Now, I've sat down and I've pulled my hair on this, and I want to tell you right now, I'm not going to vote on this. I've already read my conflict of interest, but having been a spouse that's going to be kicked off here, if I was going to vote, I would vote for option 2, which would be moving. My wife said, you don't need to vote on this, it's too close, leave it alone, and I happen to agree with her on this one. But I wanted to bring these things up, and there's one other thing for sure that I wanted to mention. Two things. One is, how can we keep these costs down? One thing we can do, all of you sitting here, is go to our medical clinics. It doesn't cost you out of pocket to go. If you got a cold, you got a sick child running a fever, go to those clinics. Statistically speaking, 40% of us have never gone to them. 40% of our people. We probably wouldn't be looking at these rate hikes or as much if we use these. When you go there, you're seeing a doctor, you're seeing a nurse practitioner. These people not only work there, they are certified doctors. They have their medical license. These are good people. Not only that, the drugs that they prescribe you, generic drugs, do not cost you a penny. So you can go to them at no cost. And when we don't, like I've said, these rates for all of us are dependent on what our costs are. So you're helping us drive down those costs. There's 40% of you need to go check them out. Now, I've had people tell me, well, it's such a hassle to get in. Well, you can go on email and do it by email. You can also do it by phone. And if I'm not mistaken, is it Stewart's?
Stewart's Creek.
It's open. You can walk in there at any time. They're open, 7:30 to 3:30. Is that correct?
No, they take walk-in 7:30 to 5.
But anyway, if you would do that. Now, the last thing I want to say, and I'll get off my soapbox here, and this is a question. I want to make sure that I've got this clarified. After retirement, let's just say I'm a spouse that's going off the system. Regardless of how this comes out, I'm coming off. But the spouse goes off, and my wife retires. Okay, she picks this up when she's 65, or she retires at 65. At that time, if I no longer have insurance with another company, would I be allowed to go back onto her insurance?
Yeah, so that qualifies under federal law as a special enrollment period, and you have 30 calendar days from the date in which the loss of coverage occurs to come back on our insurance plan, whether she is an active employee or a retiree, because we offer a group health plan in both scenarios.
Thank you. The last thing I'll say, and I said this at our other meeting, we've got to be careful with what we're doing with our insurance. You know, our schools are rated some of the highest in this state and in the nation. I know our police officers, our ambulance service drivers, all of our employees here, the reason we've got a lot of them, just like Mr. Brooks was saying, is because of the benefits we offer. Now, I've had people tell me, hey, these benefits are leaving, I'm leaving. I mean, that's flat out some people over this. And we've got a balancing act to do. You know, we're looking at 10 cents on the property tax rate, which I don't think it's fair to put off on the citizens of the county, all for us. But, you know, like I said, we still have to take care of our employees, and we've got to keep this in mind. But of the options I've looked at, this option 2 for what we have in front of us is the best option I see. Thank you.
Commissioner Phillips, excuse me.
I don't know whether a motion is in order right now or not, but I've not heard one ringing endorsement of option 3, and I'd like to make a motion that we remove option 3 from consideration and narrow our focus to options 1 and 2.
Second, Commissioner McAdoo. Other discussion or other questions regarding that motion? All right, I think we can have a voice vote on this one. Since all of you in favor of that, then please say aye. Aye. All right, so option 1 and 2 are still on the table. I didn't ask for it. Are there any opposed? Let me put that in the record if they are. Thank you. No opposed. All right, other questions of Ms. We have Mr. Gurley and then Commissioner Turner. Mr. Gurley.
Yes, this is more of a comment than a question. I know you've done a lot of your homework. Even though I read that conflict of interest statement a moment ago, as I said, I'll be retiring the end of July. I haven't been here long enough to. I have my health insurance or Medicare supplement will come through my previous employer. But I've worked for 2 Fortune 500 corporations as well as the state of Tennessee and 2 local entities, Williamson and Rutherford. When I left the state about 20 years ago, within 2 years, my salary had doubled. So, you know, it's always been that you might not make as much money, but the benefits offset some of that in government service. I'm afraid that we may hurt those who can least afford it. You mentioned an average salary of 40-something thousand, but I know lots of employees out here don't make anywhere near that. They're making half of that. And that's just, you know, right at the poverty level already. So this is just food for thought. I think we as a commission, the insurance committee, we need to look at somehow tying this into a total compensation insurance and looking at the whole picture of how the financial aspects and survivability of our employees. Because if you can't survive, you're not going to stay. And like I said, I left the state, and within 2 years was double my salary. By the time I left, it was over triple. And that's the difference between industry and government service. I never would have achieved salary-wise, or in some cases opportunity-wise, what I achieved in the private industry had I stayed with the state. That being said, I think we have some hard looks tonight, but I really think that ongoing we need to look at the whole picture of the financial well-being of our employees so that we don't lose people with a lot of training, with a lot of experience, and contribute a lot to this county. Thank you.
Commissioner Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Street, for this presentation. I think to Commissioner Phillips' point, I wouldn't go so far to make a motion, but it sounds like most everyone that spoke so far is leaning towards option 2 and not necessarily option 1. But as a result of that, I think the flip side of that is obviously we need to keep looking at ways to cut costs, and that gets us a lot closer than what we were with option 1. My question for that is there a way for, and I think one of the gentlemen that spoke earlier had talked about how there's always a fear factor with HRA and HSA plans, but there really shouldn't be, because it's really the same coverage that you'd get if you take a high deductible or a copay plan. You still have the same benefits. That's a pre-tax monies that go into a set account that employees can use. So my question along those lines, Ms. Street, is have we talked about to help lower some of those costs, not only for the employees but specifically for the county, because that's why we're here, to moving employees that come on starting in January 1 of 2017 to not offer either a deductible plan or a copay plan, but only allow them to choose between an HRA plan or a copay plan, because more people are starting to trend that way. But that would significantly reduce our costs at the county level, but it wouldn't hurt the benefits that the employee would receive, correct? I want to make sure I've got that right, because everything would stay the same with them. They would just pay pre-tax first, correct? They'd lose more money out of the paycheck up front, but they wouldn't see it come out for their premium costs, correct?
So where the HRA, he was right in a lot of his comments. There was a couple of things there that are unknown unless you've dealt with this. One of those is the educational aspect, as an example. The HRA plan is a difficult plan. It does have a lot of fear around it for individuals, because even though you do a financial analysis for them and show where the premium savings would offset the higher deductible, there still is a fear and concern. We do a lot of educational presentations about benefits. We get very low turnout to those, and so, it's got to take the employee to buy into the process. It's always a challenge with the Board of Ed because you have classified and you can't require them to work over, even though we try to hit the teacher meetings, and, it's a challenge for us. The HRA plan and the copay plan are two different plans, and the HRA plan is not a solution for individuals who have high pharmaceutical costs. If their pharmaceutical costs are high, it can be very financially devastating for them. And I have heard situations where they would become diabetic during the year and the cost of their medications would break them. So you have to consider those particular things. We have over the last 5 years, tried to spread the plans out far enough to drive the proper consideration as to what's the best option. I can tell you that even when we sit down with some people and we say, here's the financial analysis, let's look at what your utilization has been, and this is where you need to be, there is a mentality of the most expensive is the best, and that's what I want. And that's not always the situation. Typically, when I counsel one-on-one, I can get them to the HRA once we look at their claims versus. But in terms of how we looked at dissolving the deductible plan, we have not. We are trying to do other things in order to sustain the plans for our employees, which the employees and the children are our legal responsibility under the health plan, before we start cutting plans out for our employees.
Right, and I understand that. I just want to make sure that we're really pushing those options because of a lack of education, that we're doing everything we can to make sure that we properly educate our employees to understand really what it means, not just to your point, the more expensive one's got to be the better one. That's not always the case. In some instances, they would need that, so there'd be a fallback option if they had an HRA, or they could choose the copay, whatever.
So we have a 8-page open enrollment book that we prepare every year, and it provides the rates. It's also informative in terms of it provides a financial analysis of what the HRA looks towards other plans. But again, the challenge is getting people to read it and ask the questions or attend a meeting or something like that.
Yeah, I would just want to make sure that we would continue to encourage, our employees to understand that, not just do what you did last year, really start to understand that, because as been mentioned, we've got a responsibility. And I know, did you say it was $1.3 million a year that the increase would change if we go from 85 to 84 and then 83? Is it 1.3 million a year on that change, or is it higher?
No, the 1.3 million was in reference to what it would look like if we stayed with option A in terms of, or the first option in terms of what employees would pay more out of pocket in premiums next year.
So what the county's responsible for employee and family and employee spouse right now at 85%, if we drop that to 84, how much does that save the county? Because I think we had agreed last year to put that into motion, correct? Or am I misremembering?
Well, we're at 86 right now, so we would lower it to 85.
So that's dropping it down how much from last year?
Our total budget went up, so the 1%, I would have to go look to see what total budget is last year compared to this year. Every year your budget is going to go up, so the 1% from a comparison analysis, I would have to back into that number. I don't have it readily available.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you. And again, I appreciate all your hard work on this. And I think even before this, I was leaning towards option 2. The option 3, I was floored when I found out that it sounded like to me we'd be charging people, we'd be punishing people for being married to somebody that worked in the same place, and that wasn't computing with me. That I don't know how that would be fair. So I'm glad we made that motion, and I'm leaning towards option 2. So thank you for your time, Mr. Reed. I appreciate it.
Schaefer.
Just a simple question, Ms. Street, and this is reference to what Commissioner Peace said about 10 cents in the property tax for the insurance. But how does the Board of Education come in? That's by far the largest part of the employees of Rutherford County, and we have all the monies that go to them, don't we, that we provide, we have to split with Murfreesboro, correct? And so that means that a penny of theirs is not worth as much as a penny for the general fund. It's like about $60,000 a penny less, something like that. Okay. Oh, so my end result is it's going to be more than 10%.
Other questions or discussion? Commissioner Pettis-Reed.
First of all, let me just commend Ms. Street here for the way she has stood in the well this evening. She has amazed me. I haven't been this confused since I've tried to sign up to Part D of Medicare. But I do appreciate her efforts and what she's done. She's done this professionally, and I think that's important that we recognize that for what she's tried to do here and answer these questions. Just like many of you, I've spent the last few weeks on the telephone, and I do appreciate this issue because it has taken telemarketers off my phones. It has been filled with employees calling, and my phone has been rung continually at home, my cell phone, as well as my email has been filled. But all these employees that have contacted me have been individuals that live in my district. And I have run into them at church. I have made the rounds at the country stores. I've made a few pancake breakfasts, and I'm sure we'll have reminders of that this evening. But I've sat down and talked to people and asked them what they thought about it. And these are individuals that were not necessarily employees. I asked that question, and how they felt what we were doing and how this would affect them as well. And what I got out there was a strong support for the employees of this county, which I think is something to be commended for our people out there and what they think of the people who do the job in this county. One little story I want to pass on to you that I got this morning. But just recently, we hired an individual within one of our departments here that's very important, and he is able to communicate with the Hispanic communities within this county. And he was hired for that, specifically for that, because we needed that communication. About the time we hired him to do that, he got a contact from Metro government about an interview. Before he went to do that interview, he told his superiors that, "I'm not going. I love Rutherford County. I really like this." Well, then this situation come up right here, and his wife would be one of those who would be removed. And her employment is with a nursing home, and their insurance is not all that great, and their rates are a lot higher. And then he made the statement just today is, "I wished I had that 2 weeks over again, and I might think differently." The thing that concerns me the most is how many of these employees we have out there, and I understand it's 30%, how many will be affected in possibly the similar way that may think, well, maybe I need to go someplace else. Maybe there's something else I can do, and I hope that we're not in a situation where we're going to lose some of our superior employees. And plus, whenever a principal out here gets ready to hire a teacher, if the benefits package is something he's negotiating with, I hope that our package is not something that somewhere else across the county line they got a little bit better or whatever. So this is one thing that concerns me, and this was the thing that has concerned me the most as I have dealt with people that have called me. Now, I'm not saying I'm not one that wants to save money. I'm all for it. But insurance is a dark, deep hole, and we all know that. I've been associated with some 30 years from where I work. I mean, we dealt with this. In fact, after I left you the other day, I called the CEO of an insurance company and just went over some of this. All my years, I dealt with the 80-20. And when I told him what some of ours was, he was just astonished at what we have here in this county. So that is a concern that I have. And I think we all have that concern about our employees in this county. I don't call them employees. I call them co-workers because that's what it's all about. We're in this together. And I found out all the years that I was in administration at the job I had that they either make you or they break you. And I think we got some of the best you can find anywhere.
Commissioner Allen.
Ms. Street, you gave us an email with lots of good, you've given us several emails with lots of good information. But there's one statement in here I want you to comment on a little bit, because the financial decisions that we make today about this premium decision are really more far-reaching than next year's budget. So can you talk about our financial liability for retirees, current and future?
So I had sent an email to all county employees, and I sent that same email to the commissioners so they could see what had been communicated, and they'd be best prepared to answer questions by employees once they called and referenced the email. And what Ms. Allen is alluding to is our liability, accrued liability for our health plan. And as of January the 1st, 2014, our accrued liability for the health plan is $152 million. Of that amount, the liability for spouses of current retirees is $9.8 million. The projected liability of future retirees, so that would be active employees today who retire and have a spouse on the plan, is $29.9 million. So we have a double-edged sword here, and that's why she brings this issue up. We have to make budget, which you can see the projections of what the budget needs to be just to pay the claims next year. So the 13.4 and the other percentages, that's just to pay the claims we expect next year. And I don't want to lose sight of the fact that in all of these options, whatever you pass tonight, there are corresponding pre-65 and post-65 retiree rates that would be included in that should you make a decision on which option to choose. What we have a responsibility to do as well when we talk about recruiting employees and bringing them to Rutherford County, I talked earlier about the tenure of our employees. Our average employee today will retire with a benefit of $500 a month. They'll get $500 a month, and they can either use that towards the premium of Rutherford County's insurance plan, or they can take that money and they can go somewhere else. It's a defined contribution model. So when we look at our budget and we set these premiums, we also have a responsibility to do things to fund this liability, this $152 million that I referenced. And until we get our cost under control for our active population to where we can level out some of the issues that we've been dealing with over the past several years, we can't begin to chip away at the block of the 152 that I referenced.
Right, any more questions for Mrs. Street? All right, you have a question for Mr. Jordan?
This isn't a question. I'd just like to make a statement as a member of the insurance committee. Option 3 never was in front of the insurance committee. That came
That's
up
correct.
later. If we pass option 1, which I think everybody would love to be able to do that, we're just kicking the can down the road. We're not doing anything about future. We're going to end up having to come up with $6 or $7 million extra in taxes, and we're going to be in the same hole next year. Unless we make plan changes, we're just digging a hole. And at some point in time, you have to stop digging. I hate to take anything away from the employees, but we could pass option 1, and next year we'd probably have the same option 2 staring us in the face again with another tax increase at that point in time. So we've got to make plan changes, and they're not real always comfortable, or we're going to either have a bankrupt county with no insurance at all or major problems. So this was, option 2 did pass unanimously. There was representatives at the insurance committee, there was representatives of the school system, of the highway department, of sheriff's department, and they all voted unanimously for it. Nobody liked it, but they just felt it was a necessary evil.
All right. If there's no other questions for Mrs. Street, you may be called back later, Ms. Street. Does anyone wish to make a motion? Commissioner Turner.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the commission approve option 2 for the county insurance plan.
Have a second to the motion. Commissioner Johnson. Further discussion? All right. Apparently you're ready to vote for the approval of accepting option 2. All right, so please, we're ready to vote. So, excuse me, Mr. Piercy.
On this $6 to $7 million that we're projected to save if 2 is passed, is there no other place the money for this could come from over in any of the budgets on the county, savings?
I think
insurance cost?
I don't believe there is. No. Other questions? All right, we're ready to vote. Please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Excuse me, Mr. Reno, do you choose to vote? All right, thank you, sir, then. Record the votes.
15 yes, 5 no, 1 abstain. Motion passes.
All right, thank you. You may continue. Excuse me, Mr. P.
The only thing that I wanted to mention, and I hope there are people that are watching this, I had several calls, people very concerned about their spouses being kicked off of the plan. And several of those would not be kicked off the plan. And if you think that your spouse is ineligible for this insurance, call the insurance agency to make sure. Don't just assume that they're kicked off, because, like I said, I've already talked to several people that would not be.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Jordan, you may continue with the Finance Committee's balance of the agenda.
all asked to be commissioners, remember that, we all did. Night's not exactly a banner night. Resolution authorizing health insurance premium rate for active employees and retirees effective January 1, 2016. Whereas in an effort to generate sufficient revenue to cover claims cost in the employee insurance fund, 3 options as set forward in Exhibit 1 attached hereto have been proposed and forwarded from the Budget Finance Investment Committee for consideration of the County Commission. To finalize selection of one of these options of a variation thereof, which will be used to finalize premium rates for active employees and retirees effective January 1, 2016. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that option 2 of Exhibit 1 of the health care insurance premiums rate for the active employees and retirees be, and the same is hereby adopted as if set forth in the schedule as attached as hereto Exhibit 1 and incorporated herein by reference as if set forth herein at length verbatim, effective January 1, 2016, resolved the 16th day of April 2015. Mr. Mayor, I so move.
All right. We'll go ahead and do this, Commissioner German. I think we just did that with that motion from the floor, but let's just be sure.
She still needs to read the motion once we got the option in there, so. This is a little repetitive, but that's fine.
All right. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Commissioner Johnson. Now, questions about this?
It's the same thing. It's just
basically, it's the actual resolution to adopt.
We've been asked to be sure we read the resolution, so we're just going to do it the second go-round.
I'm just doing what I was told.
Our finance director, we need to listen to her. All right. If there are other questions in, we're ready to vote. Please cast your votes. Can you do that, Mr. Robertson? He's going to have to reset something because he's already used up that item.
Well, really, he should have read that.
Are you ready to go? Okay, so please cast your votes.
That was the resolution.
Then he should have said, okay, I'm plugging number 2. I'll read the resolution. That was the
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Or the votes.
15 yes, 5 no, 1 abstain. Motion passes.
It came out the same. That's good.
Item J2H, acceptance of E911 grant and related budget amendment. Whereas Rutherford County has received a grant in the amount of $457,650 for the virtual consolidation project of the Sheriff's Department, City of Murfreesboro, and Emergency Medical Service dispatch from the E911 board. And whereas the Sheriff's Department must purchase a computer hardware for the virtual consolidation project at a cost of $112,500. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the county mayor and other appropriate officials of Rutherford County, Tennessee, be and are hereby authorized to accept the grant from the E911 board in the amount of $457,650, and additionally that the general fund be amended as follows to reflect the funds needed for computer hardware. Increase in revenue, $112,500. Decreased unassigned fund balance, $112,500. Resolved this 16th day of April, 2015. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Okay, do we have a second? That was Commissioner P. Now, anyone have any questions or discussion here? Not seeing anyone rising. We're ready to vote. Please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the votes, please.
21 yes, motion passes.
Next 2 items, the presentation of the debt service fund cash flow and debt management policy for the 3-star program. And item K, the presentation of state approval and State Form CT 0253 for issuance of capital outlay notes is for the commissioners to review, and anybody who wants, it's on the SharePoint. You can look it up on your iPads, and that's just for their review.
For their review of our debt policy that we have to do once a year.
That time actually is all I've got.
So, did we get?
They don't have to vote on it. We just have to present it.
Just
It's
have
got
to be
for their access
recorded
to
into
look
our
at it
minutes
and
that we
review.
have prepared this information in support of the application for this 3-star program. Oh, thank you very much there then, Commissioner Jordan. What about K? Did we do that one?
K is the same thing. I mean, that's, he mentioned both parts.
In both of those?
Yes, K is the, again, it's for your information. If you see that first letter that comes from the state of Tennessee, it says that this letter, it should be included in the minutes and the meetings. It's on the SharePoint. It's out there.
Item K is something, again, that the state has asked us to include in the minutes of this meeting. It doesn't require any particular action.
I said push to mute. Okay. Okay, so all this is, if you know, we did approval of an interfund capital outlay note. This is a letter that says it's approved, and for us to present it at this meeting that the state approved that process, and then there are forms that's behind it that pretty much says we're borrowing from ourselves at no rate of interest is 0, and that we will be paying it back within 3 years, and actually we'll pay it back with these bond proceeds.
Okay.
Again, it just has to be in the record, on the record, that you see it.
All right, do you understand that? If so, we will move on. That's just a housekeeping, you might say, at the request of the comptroller's office. All right. Well, it looks like the balance of our committees have no report. So is there anyone that has any other business they'd like to bring before this body? Commissioner Jordan?
The insurance committee has gotten to be a big deal. Used to be nobody much even went to the meetings, and it was very low turnout and all. I've been on the insurance committee for a number of years, and I remember Mr. Mayor called me. I was in Lewisburg pumping gas at a gas station. I put gas in my pickup, and he called and said, "You're now on the insurance committee," and so I've been there ever since. But I've got some additional obligations in my business. I'm trying to keep up with the budget stuff as chair, and I've joked about this for years, but I'm going to officially resign from the insurance committee and hope that somebody in here will be able to put more time into it than I'm able to, because you just can't run to the meeting and pick it up and go. You've got to do your homework and all. It's a big deal, and so it's the mayor's to appoint, I believe, and good luck to whoever takes my spot. But this is not a joke this time. I am officially asking somebody else to step up and take that appointment.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for your participation and all of those that serve on that committee. So I'm sure we are going to find someone. It may be difficult, but we will certainly do our very best to get a person to fill that role. It's very important. Commissioner P.
I am not volunteering for that job. However, I wanted to let y'all know that the Kittrell Volunteer Fire Department is having a country ham breakfast this Saturday, 6 to 10. Please come out and support them.
Anyone have any other business or announcements? Well, okay, then thank you very much for your participation. We've had a very good, healthy, professional discussion, and we are adjourned.